Atlanta just got hit with a gut punch. A starter goes down, the front office scrambles, and in the middle of the chaos, an unexpected trade shocks the locker room. This isn't a minor roster tweak. This is survival. The Falcons are already rewriting their season before it even begins. Breaking news out of Atlanta. In just a few hours, everything changed: an injury, a bold trade, and a shakeup that nobody saw coming. The Falcons were forced into action after a devastating blow to their offensive line. Starting right tackle Caleb McGarry went down with a serious injury, and suddenly, one of the team's most reliable pieces was gone. His timetable to return is uncertain, and that uncertainty pushed the front office into overdrive. To keep their season alive, the Falcons pulled the trigger on a move that could define their offense in 2025. They struck a deal with the Seattle Seahawks, bringing in offensive lineman Michael Jarrell in exchange for a conditional 7th-round pick in 2027. On paper, it looks small, but in reality, it's massive. This was not a depth move. This was a lifeline. Jarrell is no superstar name, but his versatility and toughness made him stand out. He's already played across multiple positions on the line, and Falcons fans might remember him because his NFL debut last season came against Atlanta. Clearly, he left an impression on this coaching staff. Now, with rookie quarterback Michael Penix Jr. stepping into the spotlight, protection has never been more important. Jarrell isn't perfect. He's stronger in pass protection than run blocking, but that might be exactly what the Falcons need. His preseason earned him a solid 64.8 puff grade, proving he can hold his ground against NFL talent. With Jack Nelson not ready to start and Elijah Wilkinson seen as only a temporary patch, Jarrell is expected to slide into the right tackle spot immediately. The Falcons didn't hesitate, they couldn't. Their rookie quarterback's blindside depends on it, and this trade could be the difference between keeping their season alive or watching it collapse before it even begins. Now I want to hear from you. Do you trust Michael Jarrell to step in and protect Michael Penix Jr., or should the Falcons keep searching for another answer? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Michael Jarrell was never meant to be just a backup body. Sure, Seattle labeled him as a swing tackle, but his history tells a different story. In college, Jarrell was a warrior, starting 40 games at Findlay and even winning Great Midwest Athletic Conference Offensive Lineman of the Year. That's not the kind of resume you brush aside. That's the profile of a grinder, a fighter, a player built for bigger moments. In Seattle, he didn't get a lot of snaps, but when he did, he proved valuable. The only reason he slipped away? The Seahawks decided to move forward with Josh Jones, opening the door for Atlanta to swoop in. And here's the beauty of it: the Falcons didn't have to risk much. A conditional 7th-round pick in 2027, that's practically pocket change in NFL terms. If Jarrell works out, the Falcons just stole a starter. If he doesn't, the cost is almost nothing. It's low risk, high need, and perfectly timed. That's why this move is being graded as a solid B. Not because Jarrell is a guaranteed star, he's not, but because when Caleb McGarry went down, Atlanta had no better option. It was the right move at the right time to keep this offense afloat. But that wasn't the only storyline to explode out of Flowery Branch. While Jarrell was arriving, a storm of cuts shook the Falcons roster. 20 players gone in a single wave, and some of those names made fans stop in their tracks. The biggest? Quarterback Easton Stick. At one point, Stick was viewed as a possible backup, maybe even a dark horse to rise up the depth chart. But his preseason? Flat. Not a disaster, but not good enough either. When the lights came on, he didn't show the command or spark this team needed. That cost him his roster spot. Still, don't be surprised if Atlanta tucks him away on the practice squad, keeping him in reserve for emergencies. And Stick wasn't alone. The Falcons also cut ties with Lenny Simon Barrow Jr., Josh Corbin, Carlos Washington Jr., a player many thought would snag the RB4 role, and even veteran safety Ronnie Harrison. Each move sent a message. This team is trimming the fat, tightening up depth, and only keeping players they trust when the season kicks off. Perhaps the most surprising name was Carlos Washington Jr. He had fans pulling for him, but in the end, the numbers game pushed him out. The Falcons are sending a clear signal. No spot is safe, and every decision now is about putting the 53 best on the field. Now I want to hear from you. Which cut shocked you the most? Was it Easton Stick, Carlos Washington Jr., or someone else? Drop your reaction in the comments below. The Falcons had to make tough choices, and one of the biggest came at running back. Carlos Washington Jr. showed flashes and had fans believing he'd lock down that RB4 spot. But then came the rise of Nathan Carter, and suddenly, everything changed. Carter didn't just show up in preseason. He exploded. His speed out of the backfield, the way he waits for his blocks, and his sharp vision made him stand out every single time he touched the football. Among all of Atlanta's running backs who saw action, Carter might have been the most electric. The coaches couldn't ignore it. Now, in just a few weeks, he's climbed from maybe to officially the RB3 on this roster. That's not just a promotion, that's a statement. But while Carter was celebrating, others were packing their bags. The Falcons slashed deeper into their roster, cutting names like Matthew Senrick, Ben DiNucci, Elijah Dodson, Morgan Fox, and Lamar Jackson, not the famous quarterback, but the cornerback. Add to that Caleb Johnson, Nola Kellenick, Nick Kubitz, and Jesse Matthews, and the message became clear. Atlanta isn't just trimming numbers, they're shaping a vision. Some cuts hurt more than others. Take Kobe Bryant, for example. His offseason buzz had fans excited. People thought he could carve out a real role. But a hamstring injury in joint practices against the Titans slowed him down. Then came the preseason game against Dallas. He struggled badly, even getting thrown aside on one play that went viral. For a front office already questioning his durability, that moment may have sealed his fate. He was gone. Another fascinating case was Jake Hansen. He wasn't released outright, but instead placed on injured reserve. That's a different kind of move, one that makes fans wonder. Is this just a temporary setback, or are the Falcons quietly planning to move on from him later this year? His future in Atlanta suddenly feels uncertain. The wave of cuts didn't stop there. Quincy Skinner Jr., Josh Thompson, and Ronnie Perkins also didn't make the final 53. And with each name, Atlanta's direction became more clear. They're betting on youth, health, and upside, and they're not afraid to make painful choices to get there. Yes, many of these cuts were expected, but enough surprises slipped in to spark heated debate across the fanbase. So let me ask you, did the Falcons make the right call with Nathan Carter at RB3, or do you think Carlos Washington Jr. deserved that spot? Drop your take in the comments. Now that the smoke has cleared, we need to step back and look at the bigger picture. What just happened in Atlanta wasn't random roster shuffling, it was a loud message from the front office. The Falcons are done playing it safe. They're done waiting around. This team is building for right now while also laying the foundation for years to come. Take the trade for Michael Jarrell. In the past, maybe Atlanta would have tried to patch things up on the offensive line when an injury hit. But this time, they didn't hesitate. Caleb McGarry goes down, and instead of hoping for the best, the Falcons struck a deal. They went and got a guy who is hungry, a guy who still has something to prove, and a guy who can step in right away. That kind of urgency is how you change the culture of a football team. Jarrell now walks into an offensive line that has already been through plenty of changes. And here's the reality, he doesn't have time to sit back and learn slowly. With McGarry sidelined, Jarrell instantly becomes one of the most important players in front of rookie quarterback Michael Penix Jr. Protecting Penix isn't just important, it's everything. This isn't just another rookie. Penix is the centerpiece of Atlanta's future, the player they are building their new era around. If he doesn't have time to throw, the whole plan falls apart. So Jarrell's role? It's massive. Maybe he's not the long-term answer, but right now he is the guy holding the line, literally. Every snap he plays could make the difference between Penix thriving or Penix running for his life. And the truth is, Atlanta fans will be watching every move, every block, to see if he's the man for the job. But it's not just about the offensive line. The running back room also sent shockwaves. Nathan Carter's rise has been one of the most exciting stories of the preseason. With Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier locked in as the stars, Carter has forced his way into the conversation. He's not here because the team needed a filler spot. He's here because he demanded it. His patience behind the line, his vision to find daylight, and that sudden burst of speed, it jumped off the field every time he touched the ball. He didn't sneak his way onto this roster. He grabbed a spot with both hands. That's what preseason is meant for, players proving they belong. And Nathan Carter has turned himself from an afterthought into a core piece of this Falcons offense. Now I want to know, do you believe Michael Jarrell can keep Michael Penix Jr. safe, or do the Falcons still need to add more help up front? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let's circle back to Easton Stick, because his release caught a lot of people off guard. And honestly, it wasn't just about what he showed on the field. It was about what could have been. See, Stick wasn't lighting the world on fire in preseason, but he had value. The surprise came from the timing. Why cut him now? Part of the answer might connect to the bigger picture, Kirk Cousins. We all know Cousins isn't guaranteed to be Atlanta's future, and the thought of the Falcons one day moving him to extract trade value has been floating around. That's where Stick became intriguing. He could have been a developmental backup, maybe a steady hand on the practice squad, someone to keep around just in case. So while he's gone for now, don't write his Atlanta chapter off completely. If injuries hit, or if the quarterback room suddenly shifts, Stick's name could come right back into the conversation later this season. And then there's Kobe Bryant. This one stings, because the talent was real. The energy was there. Fans and coaches saw the potential, and then a hamstring injury shut it all down. That's the brutal side of football. One moment you're on track to break through, the next you're fighting to stay on the roster. His preseason struggles, especially that rough outing against Dallas, were the final straw. And just like that, he was gone. But here's the thing. This doesn't feel like the end of his story. Bryant has tools, he has raw ability, and if he gets healthy and lands another opportunity, we could see him make noise somewhere else. For now, though, it's a painful what could have been. Altogether, these cuts and trades show us exactly what Atlanta is prioritizing. The Falcons aren't interested in holding onto projects or waiting around for players to develop. They want depth with upside. They want players who are ready right now. And above all, they want to protect their offensive centerpiece, Michael Penix Jr. It's harsh. It's cold. But that's the NFL. Good players get caught in the numbers game every year. And this time, Stick and Bryant were among them. So tell me, Falcons fans, do you believe the front office is making the right moves by being this aggressive, or are they being too cutthroat? Drop your take in the comments below.